The greencoats come storming into my house, shotguns and M4s up and aimed at me as a dozen mouths shout for me to
get on the ground. Don't move. Hands up. Are there bears? Keep your hands where we can see them. Put your hands behind your head. On your knees. Are there any bears present in the house? Why are your hands behind your head? Sir, are there any bears in the house? I said on your knees. Answer the damn question. Are there any fucking bears in the house?
One thing you never expect to say in your life is, I was raided by park rangers. But I'd be lying if I didn't admit I was expecting them to show up sooner rather than later. Through the chaos steps a man. The round brim of his brown hat shadows his eyes, but I know he's staring directly at me because I know his reputation.
Hello, Mr. Carlyle,
Shadow Eyes says.
We finally meet in person.
Do I know you?
I ask, deflecting the inevitable. There's a certain timing needed in this situation.
No, we have never met,
Shadow Eyes says.
But you know who I am, just as I know who you are.
I'm flattered,
I say. Sure, I've had a couple of my articles picked up by news services over the years, but mine isn't a name people generally know. Hell, most of the editors I've worked for barely ever bothered to learn my name.
We've been tracking you,
Shadow Eyes says as he starts to pace back and forth in front of me. Realistically, I can probably make a break for it. Shadow Eyes' pacing is so distracting that all the other rangers are watching him walk back and forth instead of training their guns on me. But like I said, there's a certain timing needed.
Do you know why we're here, Mr. Carlyle?
Shadow Eyes asks, closing my escape window as he brings the attention back to me.
No,
I state. He laughs like I made a joke.
No, really. I don't know why you are here.
Shadow Eyes continues laughing. The other rangers join him. Then they all stop laughing at once as Shadow Eyes shoves his face in mine. Or would have if the brim of his hat hadn't hit my forehead first, causing the hat to tilt back suddenly, which in turn causes Shadow Eyes to frantically grab for his hat before it can fall off the back of his head. He manages to save the hat in time and puts it back in place before he steps away and starts pacing once more. In all of that, I never do see his actual eyes. I wonder if he even has eyes. I mean, knowing what I know about park rangers, the sockets hidden under that brim could be entirely empty, just holes in his face where his eyes should be. It's highly unlikely, but not impossible. Park rangers aren't normal.
Where is Adam Haggler, Mr. Carlyle?
Shadow Eyes asks. Hearing that name makes my skin break out in goosebumps, but I keep my cool and frown at Shadow Eyes.
I don't know any Adam Haggler,
I lie. Shadow Eyes stops pacing. He doesn't turn to me or look my way. He just stops and stands there for several minutes. I look about, but none of the greencoats meet my gaze. Their eyes, which I can see, are set on Shadow Eyes.
I don't believe you, Mr. Carlyle,
he says finally. A few of the rangers let out their breath like they'd been holding it in the whole time, just waiting for Shadow Eyes to speak, which is weird and very park ranger-like.
Okay,
I say.
The thing is, I don't really care if you believe me or not.
Oh, you will, Mr. Carlyle,
Shadow Eyes responds.
You will care. I'll make sure of it.
What does that mean?
I ask, but he waves me away and starts pacing yet again.
Adam Haggler,
Shadow Eyes says after 8 pacing repetitions.
He met with you at your request, isn't that right? He told you a story about the woods.
The way he says those last 2 words, the woods, it sounds like he was going for ominous. But coming out of Shadow Eyes' mouth, the words sound a little more game show hosty, like he's trying to set up a big reveal. I'm sure the way he thinks it sounds, he expected lightning to flash outside, followed immediately by a booming peal of thunder. What I hear in my head is a sad trombone and a studio audience groaning sadly.
Listen, I think you have the wrong guy,
I say and give the man my most pleading look. It sometimes works on cops, so maybe it'll work on a park ranger. It doesn't.
Oh, I got the right guy,
Shadow Eye yells, getting back in my face. And yes, the same thing happens to his hat. He scrambles to keep it from falling off his head. I still don't see his eyes, but I will, and soon.
Son of a bitch.
Shadow Eyes mumbles as he fixes his hat once again.
Should we search the place?
One of the park rangers asks.
Yeah, do that.
Shadow Eyes replies with way too much enthusiasm. That game show host vibe back again.
Let no stone go unturned.
I don't have stones in my house.
Oh, are you trying to be funny, Mr. Carlyle?
Shadow Eyes snaps.
You a funny guy? Is that it?
I'm not trying to be anything. You're the ones who broke into my house and assaulted me, remember? And what the hell are you even doing here?
Justice,
Shadow Eyes says. I can tell by some of the looks the other rangers give him as they head off to search my house that Shadow Eyes says justice way too often. As a journalist, you get a sense for these things.
Justice?
I ask, letting the word hang in the air as I wait for an explanation.
Like you don't know,
Shadow Eyes says, then backs off and snaps his fingers.
Take him into the kitchen.
Gloved hands pull me away from the wall and half drag, half push me toward my own kitchen. I'm manhandled through the doorway and over to the small table where I'm shoved down into one of the two chairs. Shadow Eyes makes a whole production of sauntering into the kitchen. Then he grabs the second chair, swings it around backward, lifts a leg high, then straddles the chair. His arms resting on the back as he faces me. His mouth twists into a sneer.
Do you have any sliced turkey?
He asks. I blink a few times and look around at the park rangers who dragged me into the kitchen, hoping they can clue me in as to what the hell is going on. I get no help from them, only blank stares.
I'm sorry?
I reply.
Turkey,
Shadow Eyes says.
Sliced turkey. Maybe some Swiss cheese and Dijon mustard? What are you talking about?
Lunch,
Shadow Eyes says.
I'm hungry. Are you hungry?
It's 4 a.m.
Shadow Eyes shrugs.
Then call it breakfast. Are you hungry or not?
No, I'm not hungry,
I say.
Can we just get on with...
He lifts a hand and cuts me off, then turns to one of the rangers standing in my kitchen.
Check the fridge,
Shadow Eyes says.
See what cold cuts this son of a bitch has in there, and make me a sandwich.
He turns back to me.
You got whole wheat bread? Or are you one of those assholes who likes his bread white and sweet, like a goddamn dessert?
I should have some whole grain bread in there,
I say.
Help yourself.
Oh, we will.
He snarls.
We will.
Then he snaps his fingers.
What are we looking at?
A ranger has my fridge open and is rummaging through the shelves.
Looks like some bologna and some honey ham,
The ranger says.
provolone cheese. They're sharp cheddar, but it has mold on it. You can cut that off,
I say.
You'd like that, wouldn't you?
Shadow Eyes snarls.
Yeah, because it'll get rid of the mold.
He snorts a laugh, but doesn't say anything else. We sit there in silence as the ranger at my fridge pulls out the sandwich makings, then assembles a sandwich on a paper towel.
Plates are in the third cupboard from the left.
I say, but I'm ignored. The ranger sets the sandwich in front of Shadow Eyes and takes 2 steps back. Shadow Eyes studies the sandwich, then looks up at the ranger.
No chips?
He asks, and returns his attention to me.
You got any chips? Barbecue are my favorite.
Pantry,
I say and nod at the door next to the fridge. The sandwich-making ranger turns on his booted heel and opens the door. He scans the pantry for a moment, then reaches in and pulls out a bag of barbecue kettle chips. With the bag in hand, he returns to the kitchen table and offers the chips to Shadow Eyes.
Not my favorite brand, but it will do,
he says, and pours some chips next to the sandwich on the paper towel. Then he holds out the bag, and the ranger takes it and puts it back in my pantry. Shadow Eyes eats half of his sandwich before he wipes his mouth with the back of his hand.
Where is Adam Haggler, Mr. Carlyle?
Shadow asks, while his tongue works the inside of his mouth. He makes sucking and smacking noises as he frees bits of bread and cheese from his teeth.
you have the wrong house.
No,
he replies.
I don't. Where is he, Mr. Carlyle? Why do you think I'd know where this Adam Haggler guy is? Because you were the last person he spoke to before disappearing. When did he disappear? Like you don't know,
Shadow Eyes says and laughs.
You're fooling no one, Mr. Carlyle. You and Adam Haggler conspired against the Ranger Service, and when the heat got to be too much, he left you high and dry to take the fall.
What fall? I ask. I haven't had any fall.
It's a metaphor,
Shadow Eyes says.
I don't mean a literal, physical fall.
I know what you meant. I haven't taken a metaphorical fall either.
So what are you talking about?
Nothing upstairs, sir,
a ranger reports from the kitchen doorway.
Are you sure?
Shadow Eyes asks.
Yes, sir,
the ranger replies.
Keep looking,
Shadow Eyes orders.
Yes, sir.
The ranger turns and walks off, shouting at the others to keep looking.
Where were we?
Shadow Eyes asks, then snaps his fingers.
Oh, right, your fall.
There's been no fall, I reiterate.
Is that so? Then how do you explain the fact you haven't published an article in over a year?
He crosses his arms over his chest as if he just made the greatest gotcha in history.
Journalism is dead, and I suck at writing top 10 lists.
He's still for several moments, then unfolds his arms and scratches his chin.
Okay, that may be. But just because circumstances in your industry are dire doesn't mean you haven't suffered a fall,
he says.
A career fall, not a physical fall.
Yeah, I get it,
I say.
Again, there has been no fall. I still get plenty of work, so no need to worry about me.
I'm not worried, he says. Are you worried?
Why would I be worried?
I don't know, you brought it up.
I sigh loudly and clap my hands together, making the rangers in the kitchen jump and aim their weapons at me. I freeze.
Chill,
I say.
I'm not making any moves. Just gonna ask you gentlemen to kindly leave my house before this goes any further. Thank you for stopping by, but it's time to go now.
If only it were that easy for you,
Shadow Eyes says, and finishes off the rest of his sandwich. With a barbecue kettle chip in his hand, he shakes it at me and says,
You and Adam came dangerously close to upsetting the natural order of things.
He pops the chip in his mouth and chews.
I know he's planning something again, because the Woods told me so. They also told me where to find you, and that you would be involved. The Woods are never wrong.
The Woods told you about me? I haven't been in the woods since I was a kid. God's honest truth, Ranger.
Like I believe that. The Woods are never wrong. The Woods know all,
he says, and smirks as he picks up another chip, pops it in his mouth, and crunches loudly.
Except where Adam Haggler is, apparently,
I reply. Shadow Eyes stops mid-chew, the corner of his mouth lifting in an angry smirk.
All you intellectuals are the same,
he says.
Elite little college boys, thinking you're so much smarter than everyone else.
Don't you have a master's in Elizabethan literature?
One of the rangers asks Shadow Eyes.
Not the point,
Shadow Eyes says.
What is the point? Is that Mr. Carlyle here is trying to hide behind his words because that's all he has.
The man leans across the table and taps a spot on the table right in front of me.
That's all you have, Mr. Carlyle. Words.
Well, that is how I make my living. So if you were going for an insult, you kind of failed there. Enough!
Shadow Eyes shouts and gets to his feet.
Tell me where Adam Haggler is! Sir!
A ranger yells from out in my living room.
We found something!
What is it?
Shadow Eyes calls over his shoulder.
Looks like a manuscript.
A manuscript, you say?
Yes, sir. That's what I said.
And what do you think about that, Mr. Carlyle?
Shadow Eyes asks me. I shrug.
Got nothing to say now, huh?
I'm a writer,
I say.
Manuscripts happen.
But why hide the manuscript?
Your guy never said it was hidden.
Shadow Eyes pauses, then yells over his shoulder.
Was it hidden? Yeah.
The ranger in the living room replies.
Where was it hidden?
In the couch, sir.
In the couch?
Shadow Eyes says, his attention back on me.
A manuscript hidden in the couch. Interesting. Shit falls between the cushions all the time,
I say and shrug.
Does it now?
Shadow Eyes says with a laugh and leaves the kitchen. I look around at the rangers guarding me, then ask,
Any of you think this is all a little bit batshit crazy?
None respond. They only stare at me with those beady eyes that so many park rangers have. Beady little squirrel eyes.
I mean, come on,
I continue, hoping I can crack one of them.
You barge into a man's house without a warrant and start accusing him of hiding some guy named Adam Haggler. That's batshit, right? Right?
They still don't respond.
Well, I think it's batshit,
I say and start to stand up.
and maybe the police will too.
A shotgun is pumped, and I sit my ass back down.
I'll call them later.
I say and smile at the rangers.
No harm, no foul, right?
Oh, there is plenty of harm and plenty of foul, Mr. Carlyle.
Shadow Eyes says as he walks back into the kitchen, a thick manuscript in his hand. He flips the first few pages back and forth, then lands back on the title page. I see his finger trace the top of the page as he says,
I took a job as a park ranger. The woods have their own set of rules.
He snort laughs.
Horrible title for a book. It's a working title.
I say and shrug.
Oh, so you admit this is yours?
Shadow Eyes yells, triumphant.
Yeah. It has my name on the title page, right?
He throws the manuscript onto the table, and it slides across to me.
Well, since it does have your name on it, Mr. Carlyle, how about you read a few pages for us while my team keeps searching your house?
Can't you read it?
I ask.
Yes, but I want you to read it.
Shadow Eyes says and sits back down.
Now.
Can I get some coffee first?
I ask.
It's early. I'm still waking up. Read the damn pages!
Shadow Eyes yells as he slams a palm down on the table.
Now, damn it! Okay, calm down.
I say and pull the manuscript to me. I stare down at the title page. Yeah, it is a dumb title, but there's a reason for that. Adam Haggler. I clear my throat and begin to read.
Sometimes you learn the rules just after you break them.
The man said to me as he stared into his half-finished beer. He swirled the liquid around in the mug, then upended it, downing what was left before continuing.
And once you've done that, you sure do wish you'd learned them before you broke them.
He held up his empty mug and gave it a tap with the silver and turquoise ring he had on his right middle finger. The sound was like a sharp chime, cutting through the Thursday afternoon noise of the few patrons and TVs that the bar had. The bartender turned and nodded, getting the message instantly. When the fresh mug was placed in front of the man, he sighed, took a long sip, and looked over at me.
You sure you want to hear this?
The man asked me for the 5th time that afternoon.
Once you know, you can't unknow, if you get my drift.
The man's name was Adam Haggler, and until recently, he had been a park ranger in the Pisgah National Forest, a slice of woods tucked into the mountains of western North Carolina. I'd been hearing of strange things going on in those mountains for years, and decided I was going to check it out once and for all. Through a very long and convoluted grapevine, I finally found myself seated next to someone who could not only shed some light on the tales I was hearing, but also was willing to go on record to confirm those tales. Apparently, and I would never have guessed this in a million years, the code of silence within the park rangers is stronger than the FBI or even the NSA. At the very least, it's CIA level. And there was a reason for that silence, of course.
I didn't drive all this way just to drink the beer,
I said and lifted my own mug.
although it's good beer, I have to say. Great beer.
Adam replied and sipped again. Then he sat there, staring at the shelves of bottles behind the bar. But I knew he wasn't really seeing the bottles. He was seeing something in his mind. A story, a memory, something that had been stuffed down and buried, but now was being unearthed once more. It wasn't my first rodeo with a reluctant interviewee. I knew how to be patient and wait for whatever it was Adam had to say to come out on its own. After a few minutes of silence and a few more sips of beer, Adam turned on his bar stool and stared me right in the eye.
Do you believe in shapeshifters?
He asked.
How do you mean? I mean, do you believe in shapeshifters? Figuratively or literally? It's a goddamn yes or no question, Carlisle,
he snapped.
So fucking answer it.
That's a very good question,
I said and chuckled.
Now, of course, many cultures do believe in them. The Filipino people have the aswang, Japanese have the kitsune, and the Indians have the naga. Hell, we even have stories here in America. Many native tribes believe that.
I don't care what native tribes believe, Carlisle. I care what you believe,
he interrupted.
Yes or fucking no?
I swallowed hard and cleared my throat.
If you were talking about literal shapeshifters, then that's hard to say. Well, when I'm done with this story, it won't be so hard, believe me,
he said and downed his beer, then tapped again with that ring.
Nice ring,
I said, nodding at the jewelry on his hand. He didn't respond and waited for his fresh beer.
Listen,
I said,
I think we got off on the wrong foot. I want to hear your story, but you have to admit it's a little strange.
Isn't that what you're looking for?
Adam responds, nodding thanks to the bartender as the full mug is set in front of him.
I'm looking for the truth,
I replied, and indicated for the bartender to pour me another mug as well. Not that I was trying to match Adam or anything. He already had an insurmountable lead in the beer drinking department.
Truth,
Adam scoffs.
Truth is what you make it, Carlisle. Don't you know that yet?
He turned and looked me up and down.
How old are you? 40?
Something like that,
I said.
A little more, to be honest.
Then you're old enough to know that life isn't what it always seems. Do you agree?
Yeah, of course. There are mysteries in this world that...
No, not mysteries out there,
Adam said and tapped his chest.
In here. Life isn't always what it seems. In here.
Don't you mean up here?
I asked and tapped my temple.
After all, our perception of reality all happens up here.
In your world, maybe,
he says and laughs.
But I think most people live their lives in their hearts, in their guts, in their souls. Either way, it's all about knowing thyself. And so many swarmers never know themselves. I'm sorry, what did you say?
I asked.
What's a swarmer?
He chuckled.
A swarmer is someone not from inside the woods. They swarm all around out here, and then they swarm when they descend on the woods during the high season. Swarm, swarm, swarm. It's what they do.
So, people then? People are swarmers?
I asked for clarification.
In general, sure,
he replied.
But you're not a swarmer?
I asked, gesturing at the rest of the bar.
Even though you're here in this place with all of these people? Being a swarmer is about what's inside of you,
he answered.
Or more like, what's not inside of you. And you aren't a swarmer because you don't have inside of you what swarmers have inside of them. Am I getting it right? No, not even close. Then explain it to me. I'm trying to. How about you shut up for a minute? Can you do that?
Sure,
I said and nodded.
I'm all ears. I knew a guy named Jack who was all ears,
Adam mumbled, then cleared his throat as he shook his head.
I'm going to start from the beginning.
Please do, I said.
And you're going to shut the fuck up while I do,
he said and gave me a look that made me think my teeth would meet that turquoise ring of his if I didn't do what he suggested and shut the fuck up. I kept my mouth closed. He sniffed, snorted, and shifted around on his bar stool for a solid minute before he said,
I was 23 when I learned that the woods have their own rules. That was the year I joined the park rangers. Ended up living a nightmare that has lasted over 30 years.
I had so many questions, but I kept them to myself. I needed to hear what he had to say.
That was also the year I killed my first man,
Adam continued.
and the two are related. Trust me. You don't become a park ranger and expect to not have blood on your hands at some point.
I nodded as if I understood.
23 and just out of college,
He said.
I'd grown up around forests. My family moved around a lot when I was a kid, and we always lived near some sort of woodlands. So going into the park service wasn't such a wild idea. My parents weren't too keen on it. They wanted a lawyer for a son. I wasn't ever much on rules, so I nixed the lawyer idea.
He laughed and took a drink.
Don't worry, the irony hasn't been lost on me. I ran from a profession that does nothing but play with rules to a profession that is governed by rules that make human law look like the instructions to a paper bag.
What does that mean? I asked, risking his ire.
Sorry to interrupt, but what does a paper bag have to do with this? It's a saying,
He replied.
Instructions to a paper bag?
I asked.
I don't think it's a... It means something so simple there's no point to it.
He snapped.
You don't need instructions to use a paper bag, do you? I suppose not. And there you go. Can I continue? Sorry, yes, please do. Where was I?
He asked and held up a finger.
That's rhetorical, so shut up.
I closed my mouth before the words on my tongue could spill out.
My first week being a ranger was uneventful,
He continued.
You could say my first year was uneventful. Although looking back, I see the signs, now that I know what to look for.
The bartender asked us if we needed any more beer, and to my surprise, Adam said no.
I'm okay too,
I said.
Can I get the bill?
Adam waited as the bartender got me the bill, and I paid it with my business credit card.
We good?
Adam asked once the bartender had taken the signed bill.
Yeah,
I said and smiled.
we are good. Keep going.
Nah, he said and eased himself off the bar stool.
Let's go for a ride.
A ride? I asked.
Where to? The woods,
He replied.
Where else? Right. The woods.
I responded, not sure about his proposal at all.
Yeah, sure. Let's go. Good. You're driving.
By the time we navigated out of town and found ourselves on the back roads of North Carolina, the sun was nearly set. It was late spring, and the days were getting longer, but they weren't long enough to stop nightfall indefinitely. I expected Adam to pick up his story where he left off in the bar, except he didn't. In fact, he didn't say a single word the whole trip. Anytime I tried to broach the subject, he'd grunt and refuse to respond. I was close to turning the car around and ditching him back at the bar, but then he sat up straight and peered out the windshield. "Turn here," Adam said, indicating a dirt road that I would never have seen if he hadn't pointed to it. I took the left turn, and my little Honda bounced along a rutted track that was barely more than a glorified trail. The world in front of us was a mix of twilight and headlights, a transitional tunnel from one world to another.
"Careful,"
Adam said as we drove a good mile or two along the road.
"The road stops us ahead." "Is that where we stop?"
I asked.
"No,"
He said.
"we're taking a right." "A right? Where?"
I asked, not seeing anything that looked like a road, a track, or a trail.
"You don't mean straight into the forest, do you?"
"I do," he replied.
"You can squeeze this thing between those two pines right there."
Isn't asking someone to drive off the road and into the woods kinda antithetical to being a park ranger?
"I'm not a park ranger anymore. Do you want the truth or not, Carlisle?"
I slowed and turned the wheel, steering the car between the two pines as he had indicated. The space beyond opened up into a small clearing, surrounded by more pines as well as oaks, elms, and various other deciduous trees. Rhododendrons and azaleas were scattered here and there. I parked and got out of the car. A slight hint of honeysuckle was on the easy breeze that made it into the clearing.
Fool, Adam said as he got out as well.
Excuse me? Know your surroundings before you take any first step,
He said and waved his hands at the clearing.
just like any human. You got out of your car as if you owned the place. Trust me, Carlisle, you do not own the place. I know that,
I said, maybe a little more defensively than needed.
I've been in the woods before. Not with me, you haven't.
Adam said, then closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened his eyes, he nodded to the east.
This way. Follow me.
Then he walked off into the trees, leaving me alone in the clearing. Every hair on my body stood straight up as I debated whether to follow the man or not. I had a need, yes, but I also had some very strong self-preservation instincts. Walking off into the dark woods with someone who was basically a stranger definitely conflicted with those instincts. Need won out over safety, and I hurried into the trees after Adam.
Wait up,
I said, and started jogging toward Adam's dim outline. I made it 4 steps when my feet caught in a root, and I went sprawling onto my hands and knees. A rock split my jeans, and blood began to trickle from my right knee.
Already?
Adam called from about 20 yards in front of me.
Jesus. It's fine.
I said when he doubled back and reached me.
It's superficial.
Then I paused and studied him in the twilight.
How'd you know I got hurt? I didn't cry out or anything. I could smell the blood,
he said as he checked my wound.
which means others can too. You good to keep going, or do we need to call it a night and forget about the whole thing? Like I said, it's superficial.
I responded and stood up. My knee stung, but not enough to keep me from the truth.
Let's keep going. All right,
Adam said with a shrug.
but I wasn't kidding about others smelling the blood. Keep your eyes and ears open. If you think you hear or see something, you tell me immediately. I don't care if it's a chipmunk farting. You tell me. Won't you know too? I'm sure your skills are way better than mine. You'll probably know if something's coming to get us way before I do. Maybe. But I was a park ranger, not a fucking ninja. Shit can still sneak up on me too.
We walked for a minute or so when I asked,
Like, what exactly are we thinking will sneak up on us? All sorts of things,
Adam replied.
Squirrels, chipmunks, like I said. Skunks, raccoons, foxes, bobcats, cougars, wolves, coyotes. What about bears? What about them? You didn't mention bears. There aren't any around here. At least not the kind of bears we need to worry about. What kind of bears are those? Bad ones,
He said.
and forget about them. They were run off out of these woods long ago. But I need to worry about the other animals?
Yep, he said and kept walking. I followed and waited for him to continue the conversation we had started in the bar. But just like the ride out to this place, Adam stayed silent as we made our journey through the very, very dark woods.
Fairy circle.
He said, stopping without warning. I almost stepped right on the outer edge of the ring of mushrooms, but Adam grabbed my arm and held me back.
Don't want to step inside there,
He said.
one of the rules. Oh, good to know,
I replied.
How many rules are there exactly? Infinity.
He said without irony.
Oh,
I responded and stared down at the white caps of the mushrooms at my feet. Each was about 6 inches in diameter, with maybe an inch of space between each cap. There was a slight glow to the caps, as if they had absorbed the light from the day and were then returning it as night took hold. Kinda like those glow-in-the-dark stars you put up on your ceiling as a kid, just without the sickly green hue.
what happens if I step inside the circle?
I asked.
The Fae come for you,
He replied and shook his head.
and that is not something you want to happen.
Hold on.
Shadow Eyes says and takes the manuscript from my hands.
What is this? Why are you talking about fairy circles? Why is Adam Haggler talking about fairy circles? Was he wrong about them?
I ask, innocently.
Are they not connected to the land of the Fae?
Land of the Fae?
Shadow Eyes barks.
There is no land of the Fae. That's just, well, fairy tales. Fairy circles are rings of mushrooms. That's it. They developed that way due to many reasons. Transporting you to a fairy realm isn't one of them, that's for sure. Adam didn't say they transport you to a different realm.
I say and laugh.
He said the Fae come to this realm. There are no realms.
Shadow Eyes shouts.
I thought you were a man of reason, Mr. Carlyle. Do you actually believe there is a fairy realm behind some thin veil in the woods?
No, I reply. He shakes his head as if I'm the greatest disappointment ever.
Mr. Carlyle, I'm not happy with you,
he says and shakes the manuscript at me.
I am especially not happy with your story here. I thought you wanted to get to the truth.
I do. The truth will set us free.
Well, this isn't the truth,
he says and shakes the manuscript again. Then he throws it at me, and I manage to catch it with only a few pages falling to the floor. I scramble to pick them up before the Rangers see them. When I look about my kitchen, I know that my secret is still intact.
Keep reading,
Shadow Eyes orders.
Sure,
I say and smile.
No problem.
Is there a problem? I asked. All I could see was the dark silhouette of Adam's back as he came to a sudden stop. What is it? Is it bears?
Hush,
he snapped.
I told you, bears aren't in these woods.
Are you sure about that?
Yes, now shut up.
He stood stock still. The sounds of animals settling in for the night receded as the sounds of other animals waking up from naps to become nocturnal hunters started to take their place. There was a snap of a twig to our right, and Adam's head whipped in that direction.
Who's there?
He asked. No response.
Show yourself to be a friend, or I will assume you are an enemy,
he called out. Another twig snapped, but that time from the opposite direction. I looked that way, but Adam didn't.
I know there is only one of you,
Adam said.
So you can stop with the subterfuge. Just come on out and make yourself known. It'll be easier that way. Unless you're a bear,
I muttered.
Hush,
he snapped. We waited, but there were no more snapping twigs or other noises to alert us as to who could be watching us.
Ah, come on,
Adam shouted.
Just because I retired doesn't mean that you have to pretend I don't know what's happening.
We waited some more, but there was no response.
Fine,
he said.
Come on, Carlyle.
He started walking away quickly, and I had to jog to keep up.
What was it?
I asked as we navigated our way through the dark woods.
Ranger,
he said.
I didn't expect any to be out here tonight, but I was wrong. We're being followed by at least one.
A ranger?
You mean a park ranger?
I asked.
Why wouldn't a park ranger make themselves known? Why hide? They probably weren't presentable,
he said and shrugged.
Presentable? Presentable, you know, not in the right form.
No, I don't know. Can you explain? I mean, that's why I am meeting with you, right?
Is it?
Adam asked and stopped right in front of me. I almost collided with his back, but managed to keep from running into him. He turned to stare at me. His face was all angled shadows.
Is that why you're meeting with me?
Adam asked.
So I can explain what? How the natural order rules the woods? How the park rangers do what they do and are what they are? How I do what I do and am what I am?
I waited for him to continue, but when he didn't, I said,
You're talking about shapeshifters. Yeah, I'm talking about shapeshifters,
Adam exclaimed.
Have you not been paying attention? Paying attention to what?
I replied, and it was my turn to snap at him. It felt good. It felt right.
You haven't told me shit yet. You mentioned shapeshifters in the bar, then you said you'd explain when we took a drive, but during that drive, you sat there all silent and shit, and now we're in the middle of the woods, and you haven't told me a goddamn thing, except not to step inside a fairy ring, or the Fae will come and get me. You really do have to watch out for fairy rings,
Adam said.
Good, great, but I don't want to talk about fairy rings.
I want to talk about shapeshifters, I know.
Adam interrupted. He held up a hand before I could keep ranting.
Which I'll do, I promise. It's just easier to show you than tell you, okay? Can you be a hair more patient for just a few minutes? Can you do that, Carlisle?
I shuffled my feet and looked down at the forest dirt.
Yeah, I can do that. Great,
Adam said. Then he turned to his right and pointed into the darkness.
We go this way. Okay, let me turn the flashlight on my phone so I can see,
I said and started to pull my phone out of my pocket. Adam's hand grabbed my wrist and squeezed.
Ow,
I said and tried to pull away from his grip, but I couldn't.
Do you mind? No flashlights,
he said.
If you want the truth, then you need to play by the rules. Artificial light will distort the woods, taking the magic from them and turning them into just trees and bushes and rocks and critters and shit. Isn't that what makes up the woods? Trees and bushes and rocks and critters and shit? Do you want to argue or keep going?
He asked. It was a good question. The hike was taking up a lot of time. Not that I had anywhere else to be, but I'd have preferred to be long gone before the sun came up. It'd be better that way.
Keep going,
I said.
But how much farther do we have to go? Those city legs getting tired?
He asked and laughed.
Maybe,
I said, although tired legs weren't much of a problem for me. I could walk and roam for miles and miles all day long if needed, but I didn't tell him that. Adam laughed at my perceived weakness. Then he let go of my arm and started walking once more. I followed, but kept a decent distance in case he felt like getting grabby again.
Up around here,
Adam said, and I lost sight of him as he rounded a huge boulder that was in our path. When I came around the boulder, there was no sign of Adam. He was gone.
Hey!
I yelled.
Where the hell are you? Up here and stop shouting.
He hissed from above me. I craned my neck and peered into the dense gloom. I could just make out Adam's face peering down from the top of the boulder.
Climb up,
he said.
We'll talk up here for a minute, then see if we can answer your questions.
I hunted about for a way and finally found what could be used as hand and footholds. I finally made it up on top of the boulder and plopped down next to Adam, who was sitting cross-legged in the center of the boulder like he was a Buddha or something.
Why?
He asked me when I finally settled myself. It wasn't easy to get comfortable on top of a boulder. No matter where I sat, something tried to poke me in the ass.
Why what?
I replied.
Why are you doing this?
He said and pointed at me.
And don't say because you want the truth. I'm not buying that line of horse crap. I'm a journalist,
I responded, wary of his reasoning.
The truth is our entire existence. Yeah, that's bullshit. Maybe other journalists, sure. But you?
He shook his head.
No, I clocked you as something else from the moment you sat down next to me in that bar. You have an agenda, and the truth isn't it.
He wasn't wrong. I did have an agenda. But it was an agenda I couldn't tell him about. Not yet, at least.
There was an accident when I was a kid. Now we're getting somewhere,
Adam said, then lifted his nose and took in a long sniff.
See? That's what the truth smells like right there. Keep going.
I cleared my throat.
Yeah, well, me and my brother were hiking alone when we were like 10 or 11,
I said.
A little young to be hiking alone. Yeah, but we were kids, and we knew how to take care of ourselves in the woods. Really? Doesn't look like it to me. It was a long time ago. People change. Change, sure. But you've done more than change. It's like you've completely forgotten what the woods are. Do you want to hear this or not?
He laughed.
All right. My turn to shut up. Keep talking.
So I did.
We'd been hiking for most of the day when we stopped by a stream to get a drink. Stream water can make you sick, you know. Maybe if we drank it, but we didn't have a chance to.
I cleared my throat again. It wasn't easy telling that story.
Wendell, my brother, knelt down on a rock so he could dip his cupped hands into the cold water. But he overbalanced and fell face first into that stream. wasn't a deep stream, so I laughed and clapped my hands. It was pretty funny.
The sound of footsteps reached us up on top of that boulder, but Adam gestured for me to continue.
I laughed and laughed, but even when I was done laughing, Wendell still hadn't moved. I hurried over to him, grabbed his shoulders and flipped him over. His face was coated in thin blood that had been diluted by the stream water. But that dilution didn't last long as more blood began to cover his face. He hit his head,
Adam said.
Yeah,
I replied.
There was a sharp rock in that stream, just under the surface of the water. When he fell forward, he couldn't stop himself in time. His forehead hit that rock, and he probably died instantly. When the medical examiner's report came out, there was no water in his lungs. That meant he'd stopped breathing before his face was even submerged. At least it was quick,
Adam said, and his voice was filled with sympathy instead of contempt for a change.
It might have been hard to leave him to go for help. It wasn't hard at all,
I said,
because I didn't leave him. What? I didn't leave him. I couldn't. I sat there next to his body, freezing my ass off by the side of that stream for 2 whole days before the search party found us.
Jesus, Adam responded. The footsteps got louder.
Hold on. We'll continue this after. After what?
I asked.
You'll see,
he said and stood up.
Hello down there! Holy cripes!
A woman yelled. I heard the distinct sound of a rifle being cocked, or whatever it's called when you get a rifle ready to shoot something. Or someone, in my case.
No need for that,
Adam said.
Is that you down there, Holly? Adam?
Was the response.
Adam Haggler? It's me,
Adam replied.
Got a civilian with me. What for?
She asked. I tried to make her out, but it was just too dark.
Teaching him about the rules,
Adam said.
You're not supposed to do that, Adam,
Holly said.
What are they going to do? Fire me?
Adam asked and laughed.
True,
Holly said.
They can't do that, but they can make your life very uncomfortable. I'd hate for that to happen to you. You know how vindictive the Puma can get.
I can't believe Holly gave my name away like that,
Shadow Eyes growls, interrupting my reading.
She broke at least 12 rules. Don't worry, I say. I have no intention of calling you the Puma. You'll always be Shadow Eyes to me. Huh? Shadow Eyes? What are you talking about? It's what I call you in my head, I say. Shadow Eyes. Because your hat shadows your eyes so I can't see them. Shadow Eyes is weird, he says. Don't call me that. I haven't called you that, I reply. It's what I call you in my head. Well, stop calling me that in your head. Are you going to tell me your real name? Hell no. Are you going to show me your eyes? A hard hell no. Then I'm still calling you Shadow Eyes in my head. I prefer Puma. You said Adam shouldn't call you Puma, but you want me to? What? I didn't say that. Yes, you did. No. I said Holly shouldn't have revealed my name like that. Can I keep reading or what? Yeah. Keep reading.
True,
Holly said.
They can't do that, but they can make your life very uncomfortable. I'd hate for that to happen to you. You know how vindictive the Puma can get. He can be a real dick, that's for sure,
Adam said.
But I don't work for him or the service, so there isn't a lot he can do about it. If you say so,
Holly said.
You got a name?
We sat in silence for a second before Adam nudged me.
He's talking to you,
he said.
Oh, sorry,
I responded.
It's Carlisle. That your first name or last?
Holly asked.
He's a last name guy,
Adam said. The sarcasm was back.
It's what everyone has called me since I was a kid,
I said.
There were 2 other kids with my first name in foster care with me, so Carlisle became my whole name. Foster care? That had to be tough,
Holly said.
It was. Well, sorry to hear that,
she said.
So what do you need from me, Adam? You rang and I came. You rang?
I asked him.
We Rangers have a way of communicating,
he said, but didn't elaborate.
So, what's up?
Holly asked.
I need you to show him,
Adam said.
I figured you'd be out here tonight. Since I trust you, I was hoping you'd give Carlisle a demonstration. Jesus fuck, Adam. Why in the fuck would I ever do that?
She hissed.
You want me to reveal the secret to a civilian? Are you crazy? Secrets have a way of going bad, Holly,
Adam said.
The longer we keep this one, the faster it will go bad. No way,
Holly said.
The Puma. Fuck the Puma.
Adam snapped.
He's a pussy little bitch who thinks his cat shit don't stink. That guy can take a flying fuck off a cliff for all I care. That doesn't help me, Adam,
Holly said.
He's still my boss. There's no way he'll find out.
Adam argued.
Find out what?
I asked.
I don't want to get anyone in trouble. Too late for that.
Holly said.
Adam has already put the both of you in a lot of trouble. Aw, come on, Holly,
Adam said.
Don't be like that. We got history together. Yeah, we do. But that doesn't mean I'm going to lose my career because you want to impress some civilian.
Holly said.
You know better, Adam. Why not show him yourself? Because it doesn't always work,
he replied after a second.
Gotta cut down on the drinking,
Holly said, then addressed me.
Why the hell should I trust you? If it helps at all, I'm a journalist,
I said.
Why would that help?
Holly asked.
Because of journalistic integrity?
I replied.
Is he serious with this?
She barked.
Yeah, he is,
Adam said.
I know why you're doing this,
Holly said.
All you care about is sticking it to the Puma. You've hated him since he started with the service. But you really hated him once he started rising up the ranks. Then the hate kicked in hardcore when he became your boss. I don't hate him,
Adam said, but even I could hear the lack of sincerity in his voice.
I'll tell you what,
Holly said.
You two come down here and face me. And if you admit that you hate the Puma, then I'll give the civilian a demonstration. But I don't hate him,
Adam said.
That's the deal,
she responded, then said.
Hey, journalist, you want the truth, right? Yes, please,
I said.
Then Adam has to tell some first,
she said.
Get down here, admit you hate the Puma, and I'll show the journalist what you came to see.
Adam was quiet for a long minute, then without a word, he climbed down off the boulder, leaving me all alone. I quickly followed and almost broke my neck as I slipped the last few feet before landing hard on the ground. As I got up and brushed myself off, I could just make out Adam standing in front of a much shorter person. When I approached, I saw a woman dressed in the green coat and pants uniform that the Rangers wore. She pushed her brown hat back on her head and studied me for a long while. Then she focused back on Adam.
Well?
She asked. Adam took a deep breath, let it out slowly, and said,
Yeah, I fucking hate the Puma.
I knew it!
Shadow Eyes shouted as he pumps a fist in the air.
I knew that asshole hated me. Oh, this just makes it all so much sweeter.
He places both hands on the kitchen table, palms down, and leans over me.
Where is Adam Haggler?
He asks, his voice calm, dangerous, and deadly.
I know you're hiding him.
How can you know that?
I ask and hold up a hand.
Before you get all excited, I'm not admitting I know where he is. I'm just asking, how did you come to the wrong conclusion that I know anything about his location?
It's not a wrong conclusion,
Shadow Eyes says. He taps his nose.
Once we catch a scent, we're never wrong. We're the park rangers.
Not sure why that matters,
I say.
Because the park rangers always find their man.
He responds and leans even closer.
Always.
Then one of his hands slips, and he almost face plants onto the table. He recovers well and stands back.
What are you looking at?
He snaps at the other Rangers in the kitchen. They all look away. One even whistles as he does it. He must think it makes him look casual or something. I don't know why he whistles.
Have I mentioned that park rangers are weird? And what's this crap about you being in foster care?
Shadow Eyes asks, returning his attention to me.
What happened to your parents?
Don't you know?
I ask.
How would I?
He replies.
We're not Homeland Security. We don't have access to people's full past like that. We protect the woods. Yet here you are in my kitchen, I say, in the city, which is a long way away from the woods. The work takes us where we need to go, he says, and taps his nose. The scent of the trail is never wrong. Then how come you can't follow that scent to find Adam Haggler? I ask. We did. We have, Shadow Eyes exclaims. And it led us here. Okay, so where is he? I ask, and lean back into my chair, arms crossed over my chest. Tell me, do you smell him here? He takes a long sniff and pauses. I don't, one of the other rangers says. Me neither, a second adds. Shadow Eyes holds up a finger. Then he lets out a breath. No, he admits. I don't smell him. Not anymore, at least. He snaps his fingers at one of the rangers. Go outside and retrace our steps, he orders. Tell me if you still catch the scent of Adam Haggler. The ranger begins to protest, but stops himself, nods, and heads out of the kitchen. Keep reading, Shadow Eyes says to me. Now. Really? Don't you want to wait for your guy to get back first? I ask. Read, he orders. I shrug, uncross my arms, grab the manuscript, and continue reading the story. A blend of truth and lies.
Doesn't it feel good to admit the truth?
Holly said.
Not really,
Adam replied.
but I said it and held up my half of the deal. Your turn, Holly. This could get me fired, Adam,
She said.
There's only us here.
He responded.
Come on now, your turn.
Holly sighed, then nodded.
Here it goes.
She said, and before I could blink, she was gone. Except she wasn't. On the ground, and it was hard to make out in the darkness, was a pile of clothes. Green clothes. Ranger clothes. Holly's clothes.
Where'd she go?
I asked Adam. He pointed at the pile of clothes, and out from under the tan shirt crawled a squirrel.
Hi.
The squirrel said and waved up at me. I didn't know what to do. Could you blame me? Most people probably wouldn't either if a squirrel waved at them and said hi.
Is that?
I asked, and crouched down so I was closer to the squirrel.
It's me,
The squirrel said.
Holly. This is what Adam wanted me to show you.
Then a blur whizzed past me and the squirrel was gone, snatched up by a long snout with many, many sharp teeth. A coyote. The coyote gripped Holly in its jaws, then shook its head back and forth, back and forth. Holly squeaked and screeched. Then there was a very small snap, and the squeaking and screeching stopped instantly. I fell from my crouch and onto my ass. All I could do was stare at the coyote as it gulped down what had been a park ranger only seconds ago. A park ranger who had become a squirrel before my very eyes. When it was done with its meal, the coyote let out a long howl, then fixed its gaze on me.
You wanted the truth,
It said.
Adam.
I whispered.
How's the truth feel now?
Adam as a coyote asked me.
You killed her.
I stated.
Why? Because rangers need to die.
He replied, licking blood from his muzzle.
They think they run the woods, but in reality, they aren't anything more than mall cops for trees. In reality? What does reality have to do with this? Freeze, Haggler!
Someone shouted from off to the right of us.
Don't move, Haggler!
A different voice shouted from the opposite direction. Lights blazed and the darkness was beat back by 100 halogens. Well, more like a dozen, but after being in the dark for so long, it felt like 100 to my eyes.
You'll never take me alive, you bastards!
Adam as a coyote roared, then he leaped toward the light. Gunfire erupted, and I threw myself flat with my arms over my head. I heard a man scream, then a woman scream, then two men scream simultaneously. There was more and more gunfire and more screaming, until there wasn't. I lay there, my hands still covering my head, and waited for something to happen. When it didn't, I slowly rolled over and looked around. The rangers' lights were on the ground, giving the woods an eerie look, straight out of a horror movie. Blood covered every tree trunk and rhododendron leaf. There were bits of ranger uniforms dangling from branches and strewn about here and there. Something wet plopped onto my cheek, and I looked straight up and gasped.
About 20 yards up, stuffed into the crook of a large branch, was a ranger. Sort of.
What the shit?
I muttered and got to my feet for a better look. While it was a ranger stuck in that crook, it wasn't all ranger. Part of the body was covered in gray fur with black stripes, while other parts were completely human. The ranger had been turning into a raccoon when it was killed and jammed up there.
They deserve it,
Adam said from behind me. I whirled around and found him naked and covered in blood and bits of flesh. He was picking something out of his teeth. He got it out, looked at it, then flicked it away with his fingers.
Toenail,
he said and shrugged.
It happens. You killed them,
I said.
Why? You don't listen so well, Carlisle,
he said.
The Rangers need to die. Greencoats are a blight on these woods. They rule instead of following the rules. They ignore what they don't like, make up what they do, and then act all high and mighty when anyone confronts them.
He laughed and wiped some blood from his face, then flicked it onto the ground.
Besides, they're all idiots. It's like as soon as they become Rangers and learn to shapeshift, they go stupid.
Shadow Eyes sits there across from me and waits. When I don't continue, I watch the corners of his mouth turn down in a small frown.
You're saying that Adam Haggler killed all of those Rangers?
Shadow Eyes asked.
That a single coyote took down a dozen highly trained Rangers? Is that what you want me to believe?
You did say they were idiots, so maybe he just got the best of them,
I say with a shrug.
No.
Shadow Eyes responds and shakes his head. His hat almost slips free, and he steadies it, then continues.
Haggler may have helped, yeah, but he didn't do it by himself. The claw and bite marks don't match those of a coyote. They're too big.
Then why are you looking for Haggler, if you don't think he did what I described?
I ask. Shadow Eyes cocks his head.
How did you know what happened unless Adam Haggler described it to you himself?
He replies, countering my question with a question. He points a finger at me.
Keep reading. I want to hear the rest of the story.
That's it,
I say and set the manuscript down.
There is no more.
That can't be it,
he protests.
There are still a couple hundred pages left. They're blank,
I say.
I only wrote this part.
What? Why?
Because the rest hasn't happened yet.
Hasn't happened yet? What does that even mean?
And why print out all those blank pages? Why even bother to hide blank pages in your couch? So you'd find the manuscript and read it. Although, you've had me do most of the reading. But still, having a full manuscript between those cushions is way more enticing than just a few pages.
This makes no sense.
To you,
I say and smile.
It makes no sense to you. Boss!
A voice calls from the top of the stairs.
You better get up here!
What is it?
Shadow Eyes calls over his shoulder.
You need to see this for yourself!
The voice shouts.
Describe it to me!
Shadow Eyes yells back.
You should probably go see what it is,
I say.
Might want to bring the whole gang. You never know what could happen in a strange attic.
Attic?
Shadow Eyes asks.
Who said anything about an attic?
Is it in the attic?
I yell.
Yeah.
The voice replies.
Wait, who's that? See?
I say to Shadow Eyes.
It's in the attic. I don't know what you and Haggler are up to, but whatever it is, it stops now.
Shadow Eyes says, then snaps his fingers at the other Rangers in the kitchen.
Bring him with.
Hands reach for me and I brush them off as I stand up.
I'm coming,
I say.
No need to get rough. I'm not going to make any trouble.
Well, not until we get to the attic, that is. But I don't say that part, of course. Shadow Eyes leaves the kitchen and heads to the stairs with me right behind him and the other Rangers behind me, their weapons trained on my back. On the landing stands a park ranger, his eyes wide and his face bone white.
You gotta see this,
he says and leads us toward the fold-down steps that come straight out of a hatch in the hallway's ceiling.
It's fucking messed up. I'll stay down here,
I say.
Like hell you will.
Shadow Eyes snaps.
Get his ass up after me. I have a feeling I'll have a few more questions for Mr. Carlyle.
You sure you want me up there with you?
I ask.
Oh, I'm sure.
He says and sneers.
I don't know what you are up to, but I aim to find out.
Okie doke,
I say and shrug. He climbs up the steps into the attic, and I follow right after him. Once we're up there, I'm almost completely forgotten as the park rangers focus on what's hanging from one of the attic rafters.
Is that Haggler?
Shadow Eyes asks, stepping closer to the huge plastic bag hanging from a single metal hook. Have you ever seen those ads for the storage bags that you can seal using a vacuum cleaner? You know, the ones where all the air is sucked out so you can fit every single sweater you have into one bag? Yeah, that's what Adam looks like. Or that's what the parts of him that are in the bag looked like. Half of his face is gone, as is his right leg. His left arm is still in coyote form while his right arm is missing below the elbow. Blood streaks the inside of the bag like clear veins. Adam's one eye stares out of the opaque plastic, looking more dead and cloudy than it already is. And at the bottom of the bag, vacuum sealed within a thread of blood, is that turquoise ring.
Sweet Jesus,
Shadow Eyes says. Then he turns on me.
Did you do this?
guilty.
I say and hold out my hands, palms up in a gesture of fake apology.
Although I meant to get his ring before sealing him in there. It's a nice ring.
But how?
He asks me.
I would have just taken it off his finger.
I say and roll my eyes.
No. How did you take down Haggler?
He asks.
And why?
It isn't Haggler who believed all park rangers need to be obliterated from the face of the earth,
I answer.
I just put that in there for funsies. I'm actually the one who thinks you all should die. Your kind needs to go. And I am finally in a place where I can make that happen.
Our kind? Make it happen?
He stammers out the questions like an enraged child.
Do you know what you've done? Do you know what is about to happen to you? Do you know what you've done?
I bark back at him.
Do you, Puma?
I spit his real name with such venom that if he'd had any open wounds, the poison would have seeped in and killed him right there on the spot. Figuratively, of course. I don't actually spit venom or poison, or any kind of toxin. That's not my thing. I'm a little more direct.
Can I ask you a question?
I ask, Shadow Eyes.
No, you may not ask.
He starts, but I hold up my left hand, and that shuts him right up. Instead of pink flesh and white fingernails, Shadow Eyes sees a huge paw with 8-inch claws sticking out. I wave it at him, and when I'm done waving, I shift it back, and it's just my normal left hand with pink skin and white fingernails.
My question is, do you even know who I am?
I ask as Shadow Eyes struggles for words.
Do you remember me?
His lips go tight, and I can tell he's trying to puzzle it all out. After a few seconds, he shakes his head.
That's too bad,
I say.
This would be easier if you had. But, oh well, I'll fill you in.
I look over and see an ancient rocking chair stuck in the corner of the attic.
Do you care if I sit while I talk?
I ask.
Don't you move a muscle,
Shadow Eyes replies, his words having returned to him and condescending as ever.
Well, the heart is a muscle. Can I move that? Or do you want me to drop dead right here on this attic floor?
Shut your mouth!
He responds with a shout.
You shut your damn, dirty, murdering mouth!
Ha! That part you got right.
I exclaim.
My mouth did do a lot of murdering. So did my paws and my feet. Oh, and I even sat on one of those rangers. It was the one that could turn into a fox. He thought he could dart away, but I caught his tail, whipped him around under my ass, and sat right down on him. I had to bounce around a little to get him to pop, but in the end, he splooged right out from under my bottom, like I'd sat on a baggie of whipped cream. Well, more like a baggie filled with fox fur and blood and bone. But tomato, tomato.
You're the kid,
Shadow Eyes says, finally getting it.
The kid I found by that stream all those years ago.
Again, guilty,
I reply.
Was anything in that story of yours true?
Shadow Eyes asks.
Well, Adam Haggler is a drunk, and I did buy him a lot of beers that night.
I say then frown.
I mean, he was a drunk.
Now he's more like a side of beef.
I laugh. No one else does.
Other than that, no, none of it was real.
I continue.
Except for all the Rangers getting killed. That was true. But you did it, not Haggler.
Shadow Eyes says.
Exactly.
I respond and crack my knuckles. Shotguns and rifles are cocked and aimed at every inch of my body.
Calm down. I have a story to tell before I kill you all. Ready to listen?
I don't wait for them to answer. I had no brother. I did have parents, though, but I wouldn't for too much longer. My parents and I had gone camping for the weekend. It was me who was out walking in the woods alone. I'd been told time and time again not to do that, but I was a kid, and the woods were so new and strange. They were nothing like the city where I came from. Walking and walking and walking. I did that for hours until I realized I had no idea which direction the camp was. Refusing to allow anyone see me scared, I didn't call out for help. I picked a direction and headed that way. Maybe an hour later, I came to the stream. And what I wrote in my little fake manuscript happened exactly as described, but to me, and not my made-up brother. I was so thirsty that I rushed to the stream and stuck my head in that cold, cold water. But I didn't see the sharp point of the rock directly under the surface. My forehead went bullseye. The next thing I knew, I was rolling on my side and puking up water. Above me, and asking me 100 questions at once, was a park ranger. A park ranger named Bobby Hildebrand, also known as Puma, also known as Shadow Eyes.
Can you hear me, kid?
Hildebrand asked.
Kid, can you hear me?
I blinked a few times, then nodded.
Damn, kid, you gave me a scare,
he said and helped me to my feet. My mouth tasted like puke and copper. I spat, and a glob of blood hit the ground.
Shit,
Hildebrand said.
I didn't know you had a cut in your mouth.
He wiped the back of his hand across his own mouth, and that's when I saw the cold sore. The ranger had saved my life, yes, but he did it by giving me CPR while having mouth herpes. I'd learn later that wasn't all he had given me. The ranger did his job and helped me back to camp and my waiting parents. They hugged me and held me and cried over me. Hildebrand called in the EMTs, and in about an hour, 2 medics arrived to check me out. One wasn't happy with how fast my heart was racing and suggested they take me to the hospital. My parents agreed, and my mom rode with me while my dad packed everything up. When we got to the hospital, the doctor said my heart rate was high, but other than that, I was in perfect health. So my mom took me home, and we waited for my dad to show up. The thing was, while we waited, I felt my heart racing faster and faster. But I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to go back to the hospital. I'd almost died, and all I wanted to do was curl up in my bed and watch TV. While I watched some movie, I don't remember which movie, I heard my dad get home and my parents talking. My dad said he was going to grill some burgers from the leftover beef we took camping. That's when I smelled it. Raw meat. I shouldn't have been able to smell that all the way from my bedroom, but I did. And something changed in me all at once. When the police arrived after the neighbors called them because of the screaming, they found my parents ripped to shreds and me cowering in the back of my closet, coated in their blood. Miraculously, I didn't have a scratch on me. The police were suspicious, but mostly confused. When the medical examiner's report came back that my parents were killed by some wild animal, the bite marks and claw marks obvious signs, all suspicion was off me. That began my stint in the foster care system. I have to say, not a fan. The first house I lived in was run by crackheads. Functional crackheads, or they wouldn't have been able to fool the social workers, but still crackheads. The husband would be found shredded by the back fence a few days after I arrived. The police instantly thought it was a drug killing. To them, it looked like some Mexican cartel was sending a message. What the message was and to whom, they couldn't say. But it was a message, they insisted. The next few years were a blur of bouncing from one foster home to the next. At the good ones, nothing bad happened. At the not-so-good ones, people who weren't all that nice somehow always ended up torn apart or half-eaten or just jammed into the crook of a branch of a tree. On my 18th birthday, I was free of the foster care system. It took me living on my own to realize that all of those killings weren't a coincidence. I'm surprised some intrepid police detective never connected the dots. But when the reports kept coming back, animal attack or drug killing, there just weren't the right dots to connect.
You've been the one killing the Rangers all these years,
Shadow Eyes says, and then takes off his hat. His eyes are the color of gold and are slitted in the middle, just like a cat, just like a puma.
And you thought it was Haggler because you two had beef.
I say and laugh.
You never once thought it could be someone outside the Ranger service.
I didn't know it could happen,
He says.
Well, it can.
I say.
The cut in my mouth, your damn cold sore. You transferred whatever makes you Rangers change from you to me. But without any training or help, or even knowledge of what was going on, my mind shut off when I changed and my body took over.
Change,
Shadow Eyes says.
but into what?
The Rangers around me hold their weapons tight, ready to shoot me down if I even make a move. It's kinda cute.
I always thought that I am what I am, because you were the same,
I say.
but when I discovered that you're a puma, a cougar, a mountain lion if you will, that's when I realized that what we become depends on our circumstances. It depends on our temperament. It depends on our will. But most of all, it depends on our environment. And do you know what animal has adapted and changed its environment from the woods to the city? I'll give you a hint. You all asked the right question several times when you barged in here, because all of you know there's one animal you can't take on, even with all those guns of yours. A bear,
Shadow Eyes says.
Are there any bears? Are there any bears?
I mock as I call out the question again and again.
The answer was right in front of you the whole time. Listen, Mr. Carlyle, I'm sorry,
Shadow Eyes says.
I really am. I had no idea I'd done this to you. If I could fix it, I would. But just because I don't know how to make this right, doesn't mean you get to kill me or my colleagues.
Yeah, well, too bad.
I say and shrug.
I mean, what can I say? I'm a bear, and I've gotten a taste for human flesh.
I smile wide and let my teeth start to lengthen.
And I've gotten a very special taste for park ranger flesh.
It's as if time has stopped. Everyone stares at me. Shadow Eyes has his hat in his hands. The other Rangers have shotguns and M4s in theirs. In about 3 seconds, I'll have claws in mine. We keep staring. Then it all moves in a blur. Guns are firing. Shadow Eyes is changing into a puma. Some of the other Rangers are changing too. I snatch the guns from the grips of the Rangers, who stay human, and bend them in half with my dexterous bear paws. I bend the guns in half, not the Rangers. Not yet, at least. 2 of the Rangers become canines, either wolves or coyotes. I don't know which, because I take their heads off with a swipe of one of my massive paws. A 3rd Ranger surprisingly turns into a mouse and tries to scurry between a crack in the floorboards. He almost makes it too, before my back foot stomps him to pulp. 2 other Rangers leap at me, their raccoon claws going for my eyes. But they are raccoon, and I am bear. And not just any kind of bear. I'm the worst kind of bear. A city bear. I feel no kinship for the screaming, scratching little trash bandits. I am not of their woodsy world, and they are not of my urban world. We are not compatible, and I prove that by grabbing the leaping little shits out of the air and slamming their heads into each other. Pop go the raccoons. Then pain erupts in my right butt cheek. I spin around and see Shadow Eyes licking his lips.
Did you just bite my ass?
I roar.
Yeah, and I'm going to bite your fucking face off next.
Shadow Eyes screams at me.
Stupid kitty.
I say and bring myself up to my full height. Of course, my head slams into one of the attic's rafters. and Shadow Eyes takes advantage of my brief distraction to come in for a swipe at my belly with his razor-sharp claws. I stumble out of his reach just in time, then I lurch forward and snag him by the back of the neck. He twists in his skin, and his jaws clamp onto my wrist, which is what I expected him to do. It's hard not to feel sorry for the moron. He leaped right into my trap. As my other paw closes around Shadow Eyes' skull, I see his eyes widen and his jaws start to loosen from my wrist.
Too late.
I say, then squeeze with all of my strength. Shadow Eyes' head is crushed like an egg within my paw. I let the body drop to the floor, then turn in a slow circle. Park rangers' bodies are everywhere. Most are back to human form, but some have become stuck halfway between their animal form. I walk amongst them and check for pulses. There are none.
Finally.
I say with a sigh, then change back into my human body.
Fucking finally.
I make my way out of the attic. No need to clean up. I have a plan. But I do clean myself up in the second-floor bathroom. Then I pull on some jeans and a t-shirt. Once dressed again, I go back upstairs, navigate around the corpses, and find the gas cans. I empty one on the floor of the attic, spreading the gas across the floorboards from corner to corner. Then I carefully pour gas from another can down the attic steps, down the second-floor hallway, and all the way down the stairs to the front door. As I open the front door and step out onto the porch, I see the ranger Shadow Eyes had sent outside, wandering around the street. He finally stops, pushes his hat up to wipe his brow, then turns and heads for my front porch. Not knowing what else to do, I wave with one hand as I hide the gas can behind my back with the other.
What the hell are you doing out here?
The ranger asks, suspicious as hell.
Your boss and the others are up in the attic.
I say.
Adam Haggler is up there.
I hold up a hand as the ranger's eyes narrow.
I swear I didn't know he was hiding up there. He must have followed me home and snuck into my attic through an outside vent or something.
The ranger climbs the porch steps, pushes past me through the front door, and heads for the stairs.
Up here?
He asks as he takes the steps two at a time.
Yeah,
I say, and stay out on the porch.
there's a hatch. You can't miss it.
What the hell is that smell?
He asks, then stops at the top of the stairs.
Is that gas?
Is it?
I reply as I pull a lighter from my pocket, flick it, and toss the flame onto the line of gas at my feet.
Oh yeah, I guess it is.
I close the front door as the ranger screams. Then I walk off into the night. I'm not worried about all of my stuff. It'll look less suspicious if they find everything where it's supposed to be. I'll be more of a missing person than a murder suspect. Anyway, I'm a city bear. I know how to get more stuff. There's always stuff around. My stomach growls, and as the sun crests up over the horizon, I realize I want breakfast. There's a great dumpster behind a Brazilian restaurant over on 8th Street. I'll head there and see what I can rummage up. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy these stories, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out some more of my episodes here.